When her ex-husband poured a glass of $500 champagne down her dress on a crowded VIP deck, his new mistress giggled and called her a broke nobody. He thought he was publicly destroying her dignity. What he didn't realize was that the man walking up behind him, holding a gold master keycard and flanked by 6 security guards, was her new husband. And he didn't just own the champagne, he owned the entire $45 billion cruise fleet. Tell us where you are watching from in the comments section, and don't forget to subscribe, like and share, because there is more ahead. The icy champagne cascaded over Amara's ivory silk dress, dripping onto the polished teak deck like shattered dignity. Conversation stopped. Crystal glasses froze halfway to smiling lips. Even the ocean breeze seemed to hesitate. A few passengers looked away, embarrassed for her. Others watched with the guilty fascination reserved for public humiliation. Victor, her former husband, smiled as though he had just won a championship. "There," he said loudly, setting the empty crystal flute on a nearby table. "Now everyone can see what happens when a woman leaves the man who made her." His mistress, Vanessa, slipped an arm around him and laughed with theatrical delight. "I warned you she would end up like this," she sneered. She traded comfort for poverty. Several wealthy guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. No one stepped forward. Luxury had a way of making people spectators. Amara stood perfectly still. Champagne clung to her hair and soaked the front of her dress, but her chin never dropped. She slowly brushed a damp strand of hair behind her ear before lifting calm brown eyes toward the man who had once promised to protect her. There was no hatred in her face. Only disappointment. "I hope," she said quietly, "that humiliating someone finally gives you the peace you've been chasing." Victor laughed harder. "Peace?" he scoffed. "I spent years in prison because people betrayed me. Now I make sure nobody ever gets the chance to laugh at me first." His words landed awkwardly. Several passengers blinked. He had spoken about prison so casually that even Vanessa stiffened for a heartbeat before recovering her smile. Victor quickly straightened his designer jacket. "Besides," he continued, raising his voice again, "look around. Do these people look like they care about old mistakes? They respect winners." Vanessa nodded eagerly. "And she's definitely not one." Another ripple of laughter spread through a handful of guests trying too hard to fit into Victor's performance. Amara refused to respond. Months earlier she had walked away from years of manipulation, lies, and emotional abuse. Discovering that Victor had hidden his conviction for financial fraud had only confirmed she had escaped at the right moment. She had rebuilt her life quietly. No revenge. No bitterness. Then, during a charity fundraiser supporting injured dockworkers, she met Daniel. He wore simple navy slacks, a white shirt rolled at the sleeves, and spoke more about people than profits. When she asked what he did for a living, he smiled. "I work in maritime operations." That had been enough for her. She never asked another question. Love had never required a balance sheet. Back on the deck, Victor stepped closer until only inches separated them. "You know what hurts you the most?" he whispered. "Seeing me succeed." "No," Amara answered softly. "What hurts is realizing I once believed your promises." The words hit harder than any slap. Victor's smile twitched. Before he could answer, movement at the far end of the VIP deck caught several crew members' attention. 6 uniformed security officers emerged from a private corridor normally reserved for executive personnel. They walked with disciplined precision. Not hurried. Not aggressive. Purposeful. Passengers instinctively stepped aside. Behind them came a tall American man in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His expression remained calm, almost unreadable. Around his neck hung a gold master keycard unlike the silver access cards worn by every guest on board. Crew members who spotted him immediately lowered their heads. One senior steward discreetly adjusted his jacket before standing straighter. Even the hotel director suddenly stopped speaking mid-conversation. Victor noticed none of it. He was too busy pointing another mocking finger toward Amara. "What?" he laughed. "Did housekeeping finally come to clean you up?" The distinguished man continued walking without changing his pace. His eyes never left Amara. One of the security officers quietly spoke into an earpiece. Within seconds, every nearby crew member stood completely still. The atmosphere changed. Not because anyone had shouted, but because someone far more important than any passenger had just arrived. Then the mysterious man spoke his first words. His voice was calm, measured. "And who," he asked, "gave you permission to disgrace my wife aboard my ship?" Silence crashed over the VIP deck, far louder than the orchestra that had been playing only seconds earlier. The ocean breeze carried away the last nervous chuckle. Every eye turned toward the tall American standing beside the 6 security officers. Victor frowned. My wife. He looked around as if expecting someone else to answer. Then he burst into laughter. Vanessa joined him almost immediately. Oh, this is priceless, she said, wiping tears from the corners of her eyes. Victor, even the staff is acting now. Daniel didn't react. His attention remained fixed on Amara. Without saying a word, he removed his tailored navy suit jacket and gently draped it over her champagne-soaked shoulders. His movements were slow, careful, almost reverent. He brushed a damp strand of hair away from her face. Are you hurt? He asked quietly. Amara managed a faint smile. I'm all right. You shouldn't have had to endure this. His voice carried no anger, only concern. For the first time since the champagne had been poured over her, Amara's eyes shimmered with emotion. I'm sorry, she whispered. Daniel looked genuinely puzzled. For what? For causing trouble. He shook his head. The only people who cause trouble are standing in front of us. Victor clapped sarcastically. Beautiful performance. He pointed at Daniel. So you're the husband? Daniel simply nodded. Victor laughed harder. I've met plenty of wealthy tourists pretending they're important. He glanced at the security officers. Let me guess. He pointed toward Daniel's gold keycard. Regional manager? No answer. Senior operations director? Still nothing. Vanessa folded her arms. I bet he supervises VIP hospitality. She leaned toward Amara with a cruel smile. You certainly know how to downgrade. A few passengers laughed nervously. Others remained silent. Something about the crew's behavior no longer made sense. Several bartenders had completely stopped serving drinks. The musicians had quietly lowered their instruments. Even waiters carrying trays stood perfectly still. It wasn't fear. It was discipline. Daniel calmly turned to the nearest security officer. Has medical assistance been requested? Already on standby, sir. And the surveillance footage? It has been secured. Victor rolled his eyes. Oh, please. He spread his hands dramatically. It spilled champagne. He reached into his pocket and pulled out several crisp $100 bills. He waved them carelessly. Here's $5,000. He tossed the money toward Amara. The bills scattered across the polished deck. There. He smiled proudly. Buy yourself another dress. No one moved. Not even the wind seemed willing to disturb the money. Daniel slowly looked down at the bills before lifting his eyes back to Victor. You believe money repairs humiliation? Victor shrugged. Works every time. Daniel studied him for a long moment. You've mistaken wealth for power. Victor smirked. And you've mistaken confidence for authority. Vanessa stepped beside Victor. You know who my boyfriend is? Daniel answered honestly. No. Exactly. She smiled triumphantly. You don't. One of the security officers almost smiled before quickly regaining his composure. Daniel noticed. His expression remained unchanged. He simply asked another question. And do either of you know where you're standing? Victor laughed. On the most luxurious cruise ship in the world. Correct. I paid for the Presidential Ocean Experience package. I'm aware. Victor straightened proudly. So technically I'm a customer. Daniel nodded once. You are. And customers are always right. For the first time, Daniel's calm expression shifted ever so slightly. No. His answer was gentle. But owners have responsibilities. Victor blinked. What did you say? Daniel didn't repeat himself. Instead, he looked toward the hotel's executive director, who had been standing 20 feet away looking increasingly uncomfortable. Mr. Collins. The executive director hurried over almost at a jog. His face had lost all color. Yes, sir. Victor smiled triumphantly. There we go. Finally someone with authority. He pointed dramatically at Daniel. Tell your employee to stop harassing paying guests. Mr. Collins didn't answer. Instead, he stared at Daniel with unmistakable respect. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he slightly bowed his head. Sir. The captain has already been informed. Victor's confident smile weakened. What? Mr. Collins ignored him completely. Daniel asked calmly. Has he arrived? Less than 2 minutes. Vanessa frowned. Why would the captain come over spilled champagne? Nobody answered. Passengers began whispering. What is happening? Who is that man? I've never seen Collins bow to anyone. Why are 6 security officers standing behind him? A retired judge standing near the railing quietly leaned toward his wife. I've sailed on this fleet 7 times. I've only seen security move like this once. When? When the board chairman visited. His wife looked toward Daniel. You think that's who he is? I don't know. But whoever he is, he outranks everyone here. Victor heard the whispers. His confidence began to crack. Still, pride wouldn't let him retreat. He stepped directly into Daniel's personal space. I don't care who you know. I've rebuilt my life. I've got money. I've got connections. And nobody embarrasses me. Daniel remained perfectly still. His calmness irritated Victor even more. You think those guards scare me? No. You think this fancy suit impresses me? No. You think flashing a gold keycard makes you important? Daniel looked at the card hanging from his neck. It helps open certain doors. Victor laughed loudly. Then maybe it can open the laundry room. Vanessa burst into laughter. So your wife can borrow a clean dress. The joke died almost immediately. Not because it wasn't cruel, but because nobody else laughed. The silence felt heavier now. A radio crackled on one of the security officer's shoulders. Bridge to executive detail. The captain has arrived. The officer placed a hand over his earpiece. Understood. Then every security officer simultaneously straightened. The executive director took one respectful step backward. Crew members instinctively formed 2 neat lines. Even passengers moved aside without being asked. Victor frowned. What now? From the grand staircase leading down from the private command level, polished black shoes appeared first. Then a crisp white naval uniform adorned with rows of gold stripes. The captain himself descended the stairs. Not walking toward Victor. Not walking toward the crowd. Walking directly toward Daniel. Victor's confident smile slowly disappeared. Vanessa swallowed hard. The captain stopped only a few feet away. He removed his white cap. Lowered his head. And with every passenger watching in stunned silence, he said, Welcome aboard, sir. The executive board has been waiting for your authorization to begin tomorrow morning's fleet acquisition meeting. Victor stared in disbelief. Fleet acquisition? His eyes darted from the captain to Daniel, then to the gold keycard hanging from Daniel's neck. For the first time since stepping onto the ship, a terrifying thought entered his mind. Who had he really just insulted? Victor's mouth opened, but no words came out. The only sound on the VIP deck was the rhythmic crash of waves against the hull below. He looked from the captain to Daniel, then back again. This. He finally stammered. This is some kind of joke. No one laughed. The captain remained standing respectfully before Daniel, his white gloves clasped neatly behind his back. I apologize for the disturbance, sir, he said. We were informed only moments ago that a guest had been assaulted. Daniel's eyes briefly shifted toward Amara, whose champagne-soaked dress was now covered by his jacket. His voice remained calm. My wife was publicly humiliated. The captain's expression hardened. I understand. He turned toward the executive director. Why was this allowed to continue? The executive director swallowed nervously. Our staff attempted to intervene, Captain, but security requested that no one interfere until executive detail arrived. Daniel nodded once. They followed protocol. The captain lowered his head. Yes, sir. That single word echoed louder than a shout. Sir. Not Mr. Daniel. Not guest. Not passenger. Sir. The whispers exploded across the deck. Did you hear that? The captain is reporting to him. Who is this man? I've never seen anything like this. Vanessa suddenly grabbed Victor's arm. Victor. Her voice trembled. I don't think he's an employee. Victor jerked his arm away. Be quiet. But his own confidence had vanished. He forced a smile. If you're really so important. He looked directly at Daniel. Then tell everyone who you are. Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked over to Amara. He gently adjusted the jacket around her shoulders. Are you warm enough? She nodded softly. I'm fine. You've been very brave. A tear slipped down her cheek. I didn't want to cause trouble. You didn't. He smiled. You simply reminded everyone that character is revealed under pressure. She looked into his eyes. I never even knew. Daniel chuckled quietly. I know. The crowd exchanged confused looks. Never knew what? The captain stepped forward. If I may, sir. Daniel gave a slight nod. The captain faced the passengers. Ladies and gentlemen. His voice carried effortlessly across the deck. It is my honor to welcome the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Ocean Crown Global Cruises. Gasps erupted before he even finished. Mr. Daniel Harrison. Silence. Pure, breathtaking silence. Then another sentence followed. The owner of this vessel. He gestured toward the endless luxury surrounding them. And every ship in this fleet. Someone dropped a crystal glass. It shattered against the deck. Nobody looked down. Every pair of eyes remained locked on Daniel. Victor's face drained of color. No. He whispered. No. Vanessa slowly stepped backward. This can't be happening. The captain continued. Ocean Crown Global operates more than 100 luxury vessels across 6 continents. The fleet is currently valued at over $45 billion. Another wave of whispers swept through the passengers. My God. That's him? He travels without publicity? I've seen him once in a financial magazine. I didn't recognize him without the suit from the cover. Amara stared at Daniel in complete disbelief. You. She searched for words. You told me you worked in maritime operations. Daniel smiled apologetically. I do. A few passengers couldn't help smiling. I just never mentioned I owned the operations. Amara let out a small laugh through her tears. You impossible man. I wanted you to know me. He gently squeezed her hand. Not my balance sheet. She remembered every simple dinner. Every walk by the harbor. Every morning he insisted on making breakfast himself. Every conversation where he listened more than he spoke. Never once had he behaved like a billionaire. Never once. She suddenly understood. His humility had been genuine. Not an act. Victor stumbled backward until he bumped into a marble pillar. No. This is impossible. Daniel finally turned toward him. For the first time since arriving, his full attention rested on the man who had humiliated his wife. There was no rage. No hatred. Only quiet disappointment. You've changed very little. Victor forced himself to stand straighter. You think owning ships makes you better than me? Daniel answered without hesitation. No. What makes people better is how they treat those who cannot benefit them. Victor laughed nervously. This was just a misunderstanding. A joke. No. Daniel replied calmly. It was a choice. He looked down at the champagne stain still visible beneath his jacket. You enjoyed embarrassing another human being. You wanted an audience. You have one. Victor suddenly pointed toward Amara. She left me. She abandoned me after everything I'd been through. Daniel looked at him steadily. She left because you lied. You hid your criminal conviction. You manipulated her. You abused her emotionally. Victor's eyes widened. How do you know that? Daniel answered quietly. Because she never spoke with bitterness. She spoke with honesty. And before marrying her, I made sure I understood what she had survived. Victor's breathing grew heavier. You investigated me? I verified facts. There was a difference. The security chief stepped forward holding a tablet. Sir. Daniel accepted it. Without emotion he looked at the screen. Public court records. Federal conviction. 30 months served for financial fraud and embezzlement. Several passengers gasped. Daniel handed the tablet back. There was never anything secret about your past. The only secret was that you convinced people it never happened. Victor looked around desperately. Faces that had admired him only minutes earlier now stared with open disgust. A wealthy businessman quietly shook his head. So that's who he really is. Another guest whispered. And he mocked her? Vanessa's expression changed completely. She stared at Victor as though seeing him for the first time. You told me those accusations were lies. Victor reached for her. Vanessa? I can explain. She stepped away. No. You said your business failed because jealous partners betrayed you. You never told me you went to prison. He reached again. She moved farther back. You used me. I didn't. You lied. Her designer handbag slipped from her shoulder as she turned toward Daniel. I'm sorry. Daniel simply nodded. I hope you learned from today. Nothing more. No insults. No humiliation. She quietly walked away, disappearing into the crowd without looking back. Victor watched her leave. The realization struck harder than prison bars ever had. The woman for whom he had destroyed his marriage had abandoned him the moment the truth surfaced. His shoulders sagged. The arrogance that had fueled him for years collapsed all at once. The security chief stepped beside him. Mr. Victor. Per company policy regarding harassment and assault against another guest, your premium access has been revoked. Another officer handed him a document. You and your guest are restricted to the standard disembarkation lounge until the ship reaches its next port. Victor looked at Daniel desperately. You can't do this. Daniel answered gently. I didn't. You did. Security escorted Victor away. This time there was no audience cheering him. Only silence. As he disappeared down the corridor, he glanced back once. Amara wasn't watching him. She was looking out across the endless blue ocean, as though she had finally left her past behind. The captain approached Daniel once more. Sir, tomorrow's acquisition meeting has been delayed until your convenience. Daniel smiled. It can wait. The most important person on this ship has already waited long enough. He turned to Amara. May I finally show you something? She laughed softly. What? Our home. He took her hand and led her toward the private panoramic elevator. The gold master keycard slid effortlessly through the scanner. The elevator doors opened to reveal an exclusive glass corridor leading to the owner's private residence high above the bridge. Amara stopped in disbelief. You mean? Daniel smiled. Yes. I've been trying to surprise you since we boarded. She looked at him with tears of joy. You kept this from me all this time. I wanted one thing. What? He gently brushed away the last tear on her cheek. To know that if I ever lost every ship, you would still choose me. She wrapped her arms around him without hesitation. I already did. The elevator doors closed as the setting sun painted the ocean in shades of gold. Behind them, the luxury cruise continued its voyage. But for Amara, the greatest journey had never been about discovering unimaginable wealth. It had been discovering the rarest treasure of all, a man whose character was far greater than his fortune. And for everyone who had witnessed what happened on that VIP deck, one lesson lingered long after the waves erased the echoes of humiliation. Money may buy luxury, but only character earns respect. Wealth may impress strangers, but humility is what truly reveals greatness. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to help us grow. The end.